So today we have the National Director at Connect UK Auctions, Rob Jenkins. Thanks for joining us, Rob.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much indeed for having me.
I want to get straight into it and talk about auctions. So when people think of auction, they automatically think of something run down or needs a lot of work. Now, that's not the case from what I've seen. Is that correct?
Well, say 20 years ago, yes, definitely the case. Quintessential auction properties, especially things that people will see on Homes Under the Hammer, is something that does require a lot of work. However, over the past, well, I don't know, say 5, 6, 7 years, we've got far more owner-occupiers coming to the auction room, which will purchase things that do not need work at all. I mean, as a perfect example, we're now selling brand new homes, where the developers unfortunately have run out of finance, and those are such sort of properties that are offered in the auction room. So yeah.
Does that come up a lot?
More than one would expect. Yeah, I mean,
So new homes, and they've just run out of finance along the way, and
basically yes. I mean, the developers, especially with the interest rates going up, the monies have just run out, so they've got to sort of use us as a get out clause plan, should we say. But yeah, brand new homes being offered as well. Yeah.
When it comes to a seller putting the property through the auction method over a traditional, why would they choose that route?
Speed is the essence. With the traditional auctions, obviously, that we offer, you're getting that exchange of contracts on the day of the auction. Private treaty method, obviously, a sale's agreed, 3 months later, no exchange of contracts. Everyone's sort of getting cold feet, and then before you know it, the buyer's pulled out or the seller's pulled out. People will come to Connect UK Auctions because they want the certainty of the sale, and it's the exchange of contracts on the day of the auction, with obviously completion 28 days thereafter.
Have you always been into property?
Always, even studied surveying at university. But yes, it's in my DNA.
I always want to know, because to me, I like to get to know someone, and the way to find that out is by, if I was to ask a friend from your school, right, growing up, is it London, or am I mistaken by saying that?
A bit of London and a bit of West Country, Somerset way.
Okay.
But yeah.
Teenage years, if I was to ask a friend who was Rob Jenkins in school, how would they have described you?
Rugby player.
Rugby player.
Yeah. Rugby player with a short temper. How things have changed.
Any sights of ambition of wanting to get into the property industry?
Well, in all fairness, I was quite entrepreneurial at school. It wasn't down the property line of things, but it was to do with making IDs.
Okay.
Proved very lucrative.
So from that part, what made you want to get into the property industry?
Well, there was a demand for these, IDs at school, and as long as we could do it properly, or I did it properly, I did it my own, I could charge quite a lot of money. And then the best thing was we had competition from people that tried to undercut me, but the ones that they made were not very good. So, and I just love the fact of making money.
Yeah.
It was very good.
The reason I ask that, I mean, if someone was to ask me, growing up, I remember this. I used to love James Bond, right?
Fantastic.
And it was a time where Pierce Brosnan, and he used to go upstairs. I used to put on my old man's ties, right? Not just ties. And I used to run around thinking I was 007. But I used to watch him as put on his suit, his briefcase, his big old briefcase at the time. I used to watch him go every morning to work, every Sunday sitting down with a calculator, doing financing and all of that. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I wanted to be in business of some sort, and obviously I ended up doing what I'm doing today. Was there a part in your life, was there anyone that you saw, like a mentor that you looked up to then want to get into the industry?
Well, I mean, my family's always been in property, always. So more commercial than residential. But I suppose that, the seed was sown, probably family related, and seeing success from that way. Obviously, when I left school, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do, and a degree in surveying seemed the right sort of choice. Never wanted to be a surveyor. It's not exciting enough for me, but gives you a good knowledge and a good background to go into property and where I am today. But
Yeah.
yeah, I suppose the seed was sown, as an early age from family, I would say.
From family. Going back to the auction market, is there anything in particular that you look for in a property to kind of put it through that lends itself to the auction
To the
market?
room. Well, ideally, I mean, if it does need work, it is ideal, just purely because there's, if you take, the whole of the population of the UK, people that are looking for a property, the auction world is full of people that want an opportunity. So an opportunity will generally come from something that needs a lot of work doing to it. So for us, ideally, it is something that, requires updating. Doesn't have to be, as we were saying earlier, but yeah, something that needs a lot of work where value can be added, presents an opportunity, and then the purchaser can potentially resell it or keep it and rent it out. But for me, I sort of call it auction fodder. So it's a property that needs a lot of work.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So you'd say the most appealing features of auction being its speed, its security, and obviously its opportunity.
Yeah.
Is there obviously deadlines on when a property is entered, when it needs to be completed by? What's the sort of timescale when a property goes to auction?
So again, this is very regimental. So obviously on the day of the auction, we would market the property, viewings, etc., etc. But the day of the auction, that's the key day. When the property sells, that's exchange of contracts.
Yeah.
So legally binding, deposit taken from the purchaser. Generally, our standard auction conditions are 28 days completion. So it's 28 days from that particular auction. Obviously, everything's passed over post-auction to the solicitors, who then deal with the completion. But it's generally 28 days.
That's the beauty of it.
That's it, yeah. And it's legally binding. So purchaser can't pull out and the seller can't pull out.
Yeah.
So.
And then speaking more finance-wise, obviously you have cash purchases, which I imagine is the bread and butter of it. You have obviously personal lending, bridging loans. Is it possible to also get something like a mortgage on an auction property?
Yep. Again, I'd say probably 30% of everything we sell every month, people will buy with a mortgage.
Yeah.
So as long as obviously they let us know that they're thinking about getting a mortgage, and we can potentially delay the completion date by a couple of weeks, so it allows everything to be done there. Or, which is slightly more common, people will purchase with cash and then remortgage afterwards.
I see.
So you're leaving in a small amount. You're using 100,000 maybe of capital, but afterwards you'll remortgage. You leave say 20 in, and then you take your 80 out and then reinvest. But that's probably more common. But yeah, you can use a high street lender and get a mortgage on an auction property, as long as obviously it's not falling down so much that you can't lend against it. But yeah.
Yeah. See, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
To me, auction I thought was cash only, and
Everyone does.
A lot of people would also think that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
interesting.
people do. I mean, if you've got if you sort of think if you're an investor, you're not really going to have, say, maybe you're not going to have hundreds and hundreds of thousands or millions necessarily sat in a bank account. You'll have it somewhere else.
Yeah.
So anything over, I'd say 500,000-600,000 we sell at the auction, people will require a mortgage, and we'll get a mortgage. Bridging loans less popular at the moment because interest rates are so high, so it costs a lot.
Yeah.
more.
Where are they sitting now? Interest rates are still 5%.
Due again.
November.
November, yeah.
Do you think it's going to come down?
I would predict today, which is the 9th of October, I'll go definitely 0.5%. Minimum.
0.5%?
Yeah.
Minimum
of 0.5%. That would be that's my statement of
they
the day
did,
on interest rates anyway.
0.25%. When was that?
That would have been
September.
September. So
Yeah.
I think another 0.5%.
I think it'll come down 0.5%.
Okay.
Obviously, America has come down.
Yeah,
which I think was
that came down
last
0.5%.
month.
Everyone was panicking.
So,
Everyone in the States were going, "What's going on? 0.5%? That's unheard of."
Yeah, well, I think we'll follow suit.
You think?
so. Yeah.
obviously talking about in the past, you were talking about a stigma that was attached to auctions. Are you starting to see a change in the type of clientele? I know you did sort of lead on to that. Do you think that will sort of change as time goes on? Do you think auction will become more viable compared to something like private treaty, which is more susceptible to fall-throughs and stuff like that?
Very good question. So, well, there's two sides to that. there will always be the private treaty market
Yeah.
in the UK, just purely because, if you're selling, say a more expensive property, 2 million plus or 1.5 million plus, it needs a different airing, a different marketing. It needs, viewings will take, a couple of hours all afternoon to look around the grounds. That's not going to be part of the auction side of things. But at the same time, the exchange is the key one. But no, I will never see a time where there's no private treaty. But people obviously these days are working, longer hours.
Yeah.
Both partners work. There's no one necessarily at home. So I think the commitment bit, there could be some adjustments in the law, but probably not for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at the private treaty. So online, 8 out of 10 properties are being reduced. That's all you see.
Yeah.
So I've done the stats on it, 8 out of 10. And I've realised a lot of it. I mean, agents aren't valuing now. They're not. They're being told what the price is.
Yeah, they seem to go on Zoopla.
Yeah.
And they list it at that.
Yeah. And even the owner, if the owner wants this, if the agent says, well, no, it's not worth that, well, then you haven't got a choice because they're going to go and give it to the other agent who will just agree.
Yeah.
That sits on the market. It doesn't sell. And then it ends up being reduced, but not even by much. It comes down, small portion, still sitting online. That's the problem I'm seeing at the moment with private treaty. With auctions, what happens in that scenario? So let's say, for example, you gave a valuation, oh, I want more than that. Do you still take it on?
No.
Because it's got to be a certain percent in order to sell. Right?
Yes, and I mean, if you simplify the auction route, let's just say private treaty, the property's worth £100,000. So if pop it on with the estate agent, spends months on the market, but eventually it agreed at 100. To get anywhere close to that 100 with the auction route, because you've got to get 10, 15, 20 bidders, we'd be marketing that at sort of 65,000 plus. That's a guide price and not the reserve price. But at that price, you'd get enough interest, enough bidders, and then they'd all bid against each other on the day. Probably wouldn't get it quite up to 100, but close.
Near enough. So a reserve price is agreed beforehand with the seller.
Yeah.
No one else knows that price.
No one knows that. But if say going back to the £100,000 property, if they said, yeah, we'll take it on at your recommended catalogue price, but we want a reserve price of 110, then it's flogging a dead horse. It's not going to happen. The market won't make it happen. For us as a company, it costs thousands of pounds just to market a property. So we'd lose money as a business. So we say, no, but thank you very much.
Do you see a lot of these properties that are online, let's say, for example, been reduced, they're not selling, they're not going to sell at the price unless they really reduce it to where it needs to be? Obviously, mortgages are high, properties are high. You can see that. They're saying that it's the highest peak of properties, but I'm sure 2021 after COVID,
I did read that. Yeah,
the peak. But will a lot of those sellers, if they're in need to sell, go into the auction side? Or does it all depend on their mortgage?
It's a bit of a vicious circle with that private treaty bit. I mean, if you take sort of traditionally people will move, I don't know, they've got a 2-bed, they want a 3-bed. The people with the 3-bed want a 4-bed. But the 3-beds are overpriced and the 4-beds are overpriced. So unless everyone brings it down, there's going to be no movement, because you're looking at a minimum of, say, in the southeast, 125, 150 grand to go from a 3-bed to a 4-bed. So it's quite a big chunk. So if the one that they're trying to buy or they they can only buy it if they're achieving their asking price.
Yeah.
Hence why the market's very
And if that doesn't happen, everyone just sits still.
Yeah, or eventually we'll have a big crash and everything will be adjusted. So in a few years' time. But yeah, the market's very stagnant at the moment. I mean, I've always sort of thought one day I might write a book about the private treaty market in the UK, because people are obsessed by, we bought this 2 years ago and now it's worth this, and it's all nonsense, because you've got inflation, so your money's devalued anyway. Plus you paid £2,500 a month in a mortgage, which you haven't actually counted into what you've made. But problem is with the private treaty world is the general public thinks they're far too knowledgeable about what's going on in the market and how much my house is worth. And all that does is sort of cause a constipation in the onward moving of buying and selling. Oh, I'm not selling for that because they sell for that down the road. And it's, well, they didn't sell, it fell through.
Yeah.
So, but it would be a fascinating read. But,
That would be, definitely.
So I would sort of think it would be a good one.
Yeah.
And then also, as well as property, you have land auctions as well.
Yes, we do. Yeah, always very busy in those as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what sort of people do you see? Well, I suppose I should ask, what's the appeal of land?
Yeah.
Attracting investors and people holding it long term, or is it to develop?
Yeah, well, I mean, we sell land with planning, land without planning, rural land, grazing land, any form of land. At the moment, that there is very much a popular demand for just owning a piece of green and pleasant pasture in the UK. You know, people might want to take the children camping or whatever it is you might like to do. But as I always say, they're not making any more land, so it's a precious commodity. And buying land now for the future is a very good, it's a very good commodity to have. But that's very popular, and hence people are buying land, shall we say, every month.
Can you say you buy a piece of land? Can you split it and then re-auction, or
definitely we do that for clients.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the cheaper the parcel of land, the more people will be able to afford it. So if you're selling 10 acres for 100 grand, so we say, which would be quite cheap, but if you split it into 10 lots and then sold them off at 10 grand plus, you'd get a lot more than 100 grand, which again has been demonstrated. I mean, especially this year as well. I mean, I think we had a number of acres, but it was split into 24, and the client got back about 1.3 million, whereas the land value valued it at 700. So, worked very well for them.
So it could be a business in itself.
Could be, yeah. And well, there are businesses out there that do it, yeah. Just got to be careful how you advertise it. That it's land. It doesn't have planning necessarily, but
can't build. Yeah.
Oh,
that
it does work.
I had one of our landlords actually bought through Connect UK auctions. Bought a 2-bed in Crawley Town Centre. Done a conversion into a 3-bed and now rents it out through the letting side.
Yeah.
Do you see a lot of that in the auctions? Are those the type of buyers you get?
Was it a house?
Buyers, it was a house. It was a 2-bed house, Victorian style, and then converted into a 3-bed. Well, what type of buyers do you see?
Yeah, I mean that's a typical. That's somebody who's obviously been and done a viewing.
Yeah.
Looked at the property and gone, there's definitely scope here to utilise the space we've got, but make 3 beds, not 2 beds. Quite often it could be the bathroom's too big at the back of the property, and then you can obviously incorporate that because you've got a window there, put the the bathroom more in the middle, but you've got 3 beds. Hasn't cost you a great deal of money because all you're doing is partitioning, bit of moving, bit of plumbing. But yeah, 3 beds, especially on a good road. Going back to what I said, could be an extra in Crawley, an extra bedroom in there. That's 50, 60, 70 grand, 2-bed to a 3-bed.
Yeah.
But you haven't had to do a loft conversion or anything like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be a perfect auction buyer who's got the vision to do that and then rent it out and get far better yield than you would do.
And then when you go sell it, you're selling now as a 3-bed.
3-bed, not a 2-bed.
Not a 2-bed. Yeah, that makes sense.
Obviously, touching on landlords and having a property and an asset being disposed of, is it also worth mentioning? Can you sell with tenants on situ?
Yep.
What's the appeal of landlords going through the auction method as well?
So, I mean, especially at the moment, current climate, obviously with all the changes and the reforms and new rights for tenants, and landlords not being able to get tax relief and that sort of thing. Yeah. The market at the moment is flooded with properties with tenants in. But we're seeing, I'd say 40, 50% of all the apartments we've got, or houses, probably more apartments, are all being sold with tenants in situ.
Yeah.
The only difficulty is because the market's flooded, it's not the best way to sell a property. Vacant possession's better, but we sell many apartments with tenants in situ, and it works very well. And obviously they get the exchange. Literally, obviously tenants paying one landlord after completion pays the new landlord. So for the tenant, it's no change. But it works very well.
Excellent. We've only got a couple of minutes left. I've got a question about so obviously everyone knows about private treaty, but as we've just realised having this conversation, that not many people know how auction works.
Yeah.
To me, from what you're saying, the auction side is quick, it's easy, it's stress-free. You know, everything that someone wants in a sale, apart from the only difference is the maximum price that they might not be able to achieve. But if it's not worth that in the beginning, you're not going to get it right. The market dictates the price, right?
Absolutely.
Why do they not make auctions more mainstream?
Well, the simple fact is, it depends on who's there at the auction. If someone's not there with deep enough pockets and you want to sell them the day of the auction, it's only going to get to wherever it's going to get to. The other thing is, I'm not going to deny the fact if you're selling a property that, is all singing and dancing and needs no work whatsoever, you will get more money via private treaty because you're opening up to a far wider audience. The time frame to complete is, it's whenever, whereas with the auction, it's 28 days. So, that will put people off who are getting a mortgage, so they won't decide to bid. So you are losing a number of people there, which you don't lose on the private treaty thing. So to make every deal auction, an awful lot of logistics, but that's the reason why, because you'd still just get more money via private treaty.
Even though the market dictates the price?
Yeah, it's to do with the completion. So if you're getting the mortgage, even though you can get a mortgage, but you've got to get that mortgage in a time frame.
Right. Okay.
And the other key factor is buyers will always listen to what their solicitors will say, which obviously that's what they pay them for. And solicitors will always steer away, if they can, from the auction route, because obviously it's not so much work for them, and they don't get paid so much. So but it would make sense, yes. I mean, we've all bought houses, we've all sold houses. It's so stressful. You think you're there, something pulls out. But,
you got a chain of 5, one pulls out,
and then the next thing you know, everyone's asking for something else. We're back to square one. Your wife's already got the new wallpaper set up, and you've got to go home after a hard day's work and tell her it's not happening. But I mean, it would make perfect sense. I mean, if you look at how things operate in Scotland, it's not auctions, but it's done.
Yeah.
It's done. Same as everywhere else in Europe. In the UK is the only country that has this very antiquated way of buying and selling property called the private treaty market. But it's not going anywhere, the auctions. It's getting stronger and stronger every year. And, the more knowledgeable people become about it, then there's more people that will come to the auction room and buy. Yeah. Because it's a great way of buying. It's a great way of selling.
There's not enough out there for people to get enough knowledge to actually know, this is how it works. And, you could...
Yeah, and like you said earlier, people always think, you must buy with cash. Well, you don't need to.
You don't need to.
But
it helps, but you don't need to.
Yeah, but I mean, again, if even if you don't have the cash, it means you can still buy a property and get a mortgage from the high street. It's just making sure that you stipulate that you need a mortgage and you might need a slightly longer completion, but we can advise on that.
Excellent. Well, this has been fun. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you both. Fantastic. Thank you for having me here.
And we'll do it again soon. That's all for this episode. As always, thanks for watching. Let us know your thoughts by leaving a comment below. If you enjoyed, be sure to like and subscribe to see more videos from us in the future. Join us next time where we'll be discussing the biggest developments in the property investment sector and how they may affect you.